We've had 2 candidates speak explicitly about the queue. You know, I'm going to start with ZACK here and kind of go around here. I guess my issue is that, you know, the queue gives so much to folks. I mean, you know, you have exciting teams there, it brings businesses, it brings tourists to town. If you're mayor, how are you going to, and we're responsible for some part of the upkeep. So if you're mayor, how are you going to make sure that we, you know, satisfy our obligations to the queue and at the same time do all the neighborhood things that you want?
Well, like I said, I'm the only candidate that, besides the mayor, who spoke to Dan Gilbert personally. And we talked for 20 minutes, a half an hour. And I told him then, I said, Mr. Gilbert, and he said, call me Dan. And I said, Dan, I'm not against I'm not against renovating the queue. We own it. We have to do it. I'm against this deal. So you think that 6 council people, 5 at the end, got them to come up with some plan that we're going to do basketball courts. Now, if 6 council people could slow the legislation down and then eventually get basketball courts, what could a mayor have gotten? So I am not against doing the renovation. I voted for the Brown Stadium. I've voted time and time again for the downtown, and I don't see that changing. What does have to change is that we've got to start investing in the neighborhoods, and everybody has to agree. Look at what the Indians are doing now. They now agree that we have to go back into the neighborhoods. I've got John Adams football field. How did they come about? With a cup of coffee, sitting down with Dave Jenkins and saying, we need a football field at John Adams. So it's a combination of sitting down and using the power of the Pope, of the mayor's office to get a better deal for the neighborhoods. And that's all I said. If you go to Detroit, you guys have gone to Detroit, that's what Gilbert's doing in Detroit. But there are people who are sitting there saying to him, we've got to do both. Mike White was clear. We could do both. Under this administration, we're only doing one.
Okay, Robert.
My concern is not for or against the deal. My concern is that the voice of the people is not being heard in this situation and in others. We've knocked in over 14,000 doors across all of Cleveland. The citizens are ardent in their frustration that those signatures, which have now been validated, they're not going to have a chance to vote on the deal, most likely in this November election. I think that's a strategic ploy of this administration to push it aside. So I'm not going for or against the deal. I've already mentioned in my earlier comments, you need a vision that attracts growth on all ends. The issue is about as many people who could fill Quicken Loans Arena for a Cavs game have clearly signed a petition saying they want to vote for a referendum on that deal. The name of our campaign is Team Kylo for the People. I believe that our country is at its best when it's a government of the people, by the people, for the people. The people are infuriated that this administration, and I was there the day those signatures were turned in, they're getting the Heisman Trophy stiff arm and their voice is being squelched. That's not happening on my watch.
Okay, thank you very much. Frank, the deal.
Frank, Mayor?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I was trying to be even with all the candidates, so I should have started
I
out
got
with
a
Mr.
title,
Everybody.
Right. That's okay, come.
I'm sorry. Frank, you signed off on this deal. You obviously think it's a good idea. Someone has also raised a question about whether or not this will be put on the November ballot, which I think you should try to answer as well. What's your defense of it?
My defense? Well, I don't have a defense. I actually support the deal, so I'm not defensive about it. I think it's a good deal for the city of Cleveland. And anybody who's a tenant would be willing to pay half a debt and then guarantee the debt and then pay all shortfalls of the debt and then extend their lease and then create thousands of jobs and then the collateral jobs as a result of that, I think is a good deal myself. Now, there is validity about how do you connect all these things to the average person in Cleveland, whether they live in a neighborhood or live downtown. How do you connect that? And that happens through the jobs created as a result of that. Now, if there's an attempt to tie that into getting extra dollars out of it in order to invest somewhere else, you know, that is a totally different question as to whether or not I would support that. However, I have taken the time to develop a $65 million initiative that will be invested in the most, where traditional development models and investment models don't work. So we are doing that which we know we need to do. And then on terms, I think people have a right to vote. And you know, what council decides to do on that is up to council, but people have a right to vote only because, as the court said.
Thank you very much. Bill?
I'd just like to give an example of what is considered a good deal. Back years ago, we did the Brown Stadium. Many of you were around to watch and see how that took place. No kickback. Why? Because the chairman of finance at the time took $1 million a year out of the bond proceeds and gave them to the Cleveland schools. I think the quote was that he took money for the big Browns and gave it to the little Browns and whites in the neighborhoods. So that's an example of what you can do when large corporations come in with their hand out, because that is the nature of business. It is the nature of a public official to make sure that something significant adheres to the community, the neighborhoods, and for me, it's always been the schools.
Thank you very much.
Well, part of being mayor is that you have to tell people the truth. And the truth is that we don't want to be put into a situation like we were with the Browns, where we're chasing them across the country all the way to Baltimore to get them back. The truth is that they are bringing revenue into the city, that in many different ways. If it's just a thing where the people just want a better deal, then maybe we can renegotiate something with the Cavs, with the owner, with Quicken Loans Arena. Maybe we can renegotiate those things. But we don't want to push our Cavs out and take the revenue that goes with them. Those millions of dollars in proceeds coming from the tax revenue of the tickets is going towards the city. Of course, that could be going towards the upgrades of the arena. But certainly, we don't want to lose our Cavs. We love our teams here. And so we have to make sure that our emotions are not greater than what's in the best interest of the city. We're a very small team. We'll be having, 4 or 5 teams. So it does have to be negotiated. Big corporations, they have to be attracted to big cities, and one of the ways they do that is through tax abatements. I am in favor of negotiating tax abatements where they also are benefiting the city as well. With big corporations, they got the money. I think we should renegotiate the deal with all interested parties and move on from there.
Okay, thank you very much.
The Q deal is surprisingly not a bad deal for the city. I think it's potentially a bad deal for the county. $88 million over 11 years, starting in 8 years from now, is not that bad of a deal. It's also from its admissions taxes, right? It's not an additional tax. It's not taking more tax from anybody. And they've promised that they'd match that with the general fund. My problem is that it's small-minded thinking, especially from those countering the mayor, saying we have to focus on neighborhoods. Why does it matter when we're trying to renovate our Q how we've invested in our neighborhoods? The problem is that he hasn't invested in the neighborhoods. That's a separate, completely separate argument. It doesn't matter that Dan Gilbert's worth $5 billion. His net worth does not matter. He's decided to invest in our community. He's decided to try to renovate a building that's the oldest in the league. And if he wants our help, why not help him? The problem is the $65 million that the mayor talks about isn't enough. And it's peanuts in comparison to what the neighborhoods need. To their point, we have an administration that's so disconnected from the people that they can't actually do anything they can't get anything done. That's the problem. It's not Q versus the neighborhood. It's not focusing on Dan and helping him out. It's the fact that it's small-minded thinking by our current administration, our current council. That's why.
All right. I think we've talked about the Q deal.
I didn't. Did I talk about the Q?
Yes, you did. Yes, you did, Brandon. Just
Okay.
as part of your other comments, you guys wrapped that in there. So
Okay.
that's why I started with Zach.
Yeah.
But if you'd like to use some of your time to
I'd like to
talk
take-
about
Yeah.
additionally, go ahead.
That's fine.
Yeah, and I was never asked a question.
Well, we
He
brought it in an
answered
answer.
it.
We brought it in an answer. I
That's
would,
why he
because
does it, yeah.
this goes to the heart of it. We absolutely have to look at it the different way. We have right now so much needs in the neighborhood. And we have a price tag. And the price tag is huge. So first you start there. What are our issues? We got poison in our houses for lead. We've got high crime and violence. We have the poverty. So we have to start with the analysis there, not downtown. So we have a big bill to pay. Infrastructure, what have you. So then we have to go find the money. So when the best deal ever, like Mayor Jackson has said in his life, is an $88 million Q deal starting in 2024, I need that $8 million a year for 11 years. It ain't small thinking to fix lead. So when it's all said and done,
We don't own the Q Gateway. We own the stadium. And we've already put $1 billion into Gateway. At some point, Greater Cleveland Partnerships and the other stakeholders who benefit from the Q have to put money up front. And that's what I'm saying, is stop making the developers and the rich and powerful drive the future of Cleveland. There are citizens, our citizens, that need us to advocate for them in the room. And that's why I'm against the Q deal, because I need that $88 million. And it is our money, because we tax admissions. It's our money. This ain't Dan Gilbert's money. And we need to put it into the neighborhoods. Thank you.
I have to mention, Councilman Johnson, you're halfway through your term.
Okay. But these are significant issues, guys. Okay.
They are.
Yeah, just to address your question, what would be done differently, and I think it's first and foremost leadership. It's coming to the table as a leader, as the mayor, saying this is where I stand on the deal. This is where where I believe the deal rests. It's lending more transparency to council when this deal is being cut. And oftentimes I feel like the council is not included totally into the decision-making process. So that's what I would do differently. And also having a plan and showing how this tax incentive in 2024, which is a lot of money, $80 million is a lot of money, how that's going to fit into our larger plan and the spending of that plan. So when you say what would be done differently, it's lead, it's include, and it's making sure that it folds into a larger plan so that we say, hey, maybe it is X amount of millions of dollars, but that leads to our long-term building plan that the people know about. And if we hold that plan transparent, they then can hold us accountable, because the people need to be the ones holding us accountable. They are our boss. Thank you.
Let me lose too much time, because this is not us against them. This is not Dan Gilbert versus us. This just goes back to priority again. And so I want to use the blueprint of George Voinovich, and I want to use the blueprint of Mike White. This is a public-private partnership. So when I talked to Dan Gilbert, he got it. That's the reason he made the phone call to Kevin Kelly and told him to slow down that legislation. Because he got it from my standpoint, because he said, that's what we're talking about here in Detroit. So this theory that it's us against them, us against Dan Gilbert, it's not. It's the fact that we need to bring back the blueprint of a public-private partnership that Voinovich got when we came out of the default, and that Mike White used to make sure every neighborhood grew.
I was about to ask, are there any other, I guess, rebuttals, I guess, is what we're on now, and I see several people want to.
This doesn't count as rebuttal.
Okay.
That's
How's
something if
that?
there's a personal attack.
I would say in 30 seconds or less, the concern is this community benefit that's spoken of would not have been there if it wasn't for grassroots organizations like the Greater Cleveland Congregations and the Progressive Caucus coming together to fight ardently to instill principles of community benefit. So at the inception, it was not there. It needs to be from the beginning, the voice of the people heard, because they're the power of Cleveland.
Okay. Bill, you had your hand up.
Yes, they did. The significant part of this discussion, there's only ever been two people in this room at this time who were major players in the making of a deal that size. One sits to my left, and that's it, myself. That's chairman of finance when the Brown Stadium was built. So it's a lot easier to talk about than it is to do. Looking in the face of Al Lerner, or what the mayor has to do, is a lot easier to talk about from people who've never been in those rooms and made those deals. I would only say compared to what we did in the 2000 and 2001, the 90s, and what's being done now. It's a fair comparison. Thank you.